The next important concept that you need to understand is the difference between experiments and observational studies. So, you need to know what the study type is, as it defines what kind of question you can ask. Because really, you're not supposed to ask questions about cause in observational studies. This is beginning to change, but it's still difficult. And it's part of the reason why it took so long to prove an association between smoking and cancer. But we'll think more about these kind of questions in week 2. So, when you carry out a study and a piece of research, you can divide it into 2 different categories: observational studies and experiments. So an experiment often occurs in the laboratory, but not necessarily. It has a controlled environment, but most importantly, you're using an intervention or treatment, and you're expecting some kind of response to this intervention or treatment. So you compare a treated group to an untreated or controlled group. They're always prospective, as in you're carrying this out and seeing what happens in the future. Observational studies are not necessarily prospective. They can be prospective or retrospective. Now, the advantage of observational studies is they are the experimental units behaving in the wild. You're not putting them in artificial circumstances which might change the way that they behave. You haven't got an intervention, treatment or something like that that's being assigned by the researcher. So if you're doing a linking between smoking and cancer, you're not making people smoke as an intervention. You're just seeing which people smoke and what their health outcomes are. You're comparing an intervention against a control group the same as you were in experimental, but you rely on the treatment being randomly distributed across the entire population. They can be prospective in that I study a group of people, smokers and non-smokers, and then I see what happens to their future health. But most likely they're going to be retrospective. So I go to a hospital, I find a group of sick patients and a group of non-sick patients, and then I look back to see what those that are ill have in common compared to those that are not ill. So observational, you have no control over the treatment. You don't make an intervention, and you do select the population. You do choose who's going to be part of your study. But in an experiment, you control how the treatment's given, you control the experimental subjects, you control the intervention, and you specify the study population. Although this does change during the experiment if you have effects like dropout or even death.